So this webinar is about zTPFGI projects, and we're going to describe what zTPFGI projects are, and we're going to talk about some new features that have recently been released in either version 1.3.1.0 or 1.3.2.0. And we're going to talk about some existing features also, and hopefully along the way we'll point out some inside facts about projects that may help you decide what to do in certain hard situations, or if something goes wrong with your project file. Is that very bad? Can you recover? And things like that. So I hope you can see my screen. I've got the projects view over here. Now right away we can see one very recent feature. I think this was released in 1.3.1, which is that the projects, there's an option to start the projects inactive. So you can see that the icon looks grayed out here. And this actually, the option for this will be in projects, environment options projects. It says start with projects unactivated. And so I've got that checked. Now if you check that, you can also have the option to automatically activate the most recently used project. So if we can detect and remember what project you were using more recently, we would actually expand that when you start up. Now what makes a project most recently used is something we can touch on during the webinar. So why did we put in this feature, start with projects inactivated? Well, if you've got a lot of projects, even more than I do, it can be there can be some wait time when you're starting up zTPFGI, and you may want to get started faster, and you find that the projects activating actually kind of gets opening and filling their contents actually kind of gets in your way. So also if your connection is not especially fast that day, the problem could be even worse. So it's really a performance issue. We thought that by allowing the projects to start inactive, you could get started faster on your work and only open the projects that you wanted to open, while at the same time leaving them in the view. So so that's in environment options projects, and the default will be to start with them. I think this is the default, these two check marks. So if you like this, you won't have to change it at all. So to make a project active, you just simply open it, and then it will fill in its contents. And I actually happen to have this one set. I think I didn't want to demo this feature so soon, but let me go ahead and tell you that you can, and this is not a new feature, this is existing, you can change how the project is displayed by default. So if you right-click the project and go to Properties, then you can go to Display, and down here is a display override. So none would mean display it as it normally displays. I mean, it doesn't mean no display at all. It means don't override the normal display. You see, right now I have flat display override on. That means that it's just a flat view of all the files in the project. You can also organize your project, and it's per project, this setting. You can organize the project by file type, so there would be a directory for each file type, and the files under that type would be organized that way. And then you can see the original directory view of the files. Let me just show that, and then we'll go to the normal view. So here, this is how the files I've got in there are the original folders that they're in. It echoes the folders. It presents them that way. I'm going to go back to the original view, so there's no override at all. That means I'm seeing the original view. I'll say OK. So this is the view that, well, your view may differ from this, but this is the view, whatever the view here you see with the gray folders and the filters, this is the view that, that your company thought would be most useful for organizing the display of the files in your project. So, I mean, what is a project in zTPFGI? I think you already understand what I'm going to say, but the project maps over usually one folder that you are, one real folder and its subfolders that that contain your file. So it doesn't, the project doesn't create any new folders. Of course, maybe a couple. It just maps over. In the creation of your project, actually, you know, there may be a couple of extra folders created or extra files created, but just merely having the project in the project's view does not create any new folders. These actually aren't real folders here. These are just ways to view and organize the files that you have. So, for example, all the source files are here, and all the files that could be loaded, like the SO files, are here, and so forth. And if there's any extra files, they're usually put down under resources, things that just didn't fit into the filtering system that was set up by your company to start with. Okay, so that's what projects are. That's how to activate the projects. Projects are customizable by each customer to fit their library systems. So the way that you, this affects, since it's customizable, you know, it means that not everybody listening to the webinar gets into projects in exactly the same way. But most of the time, for most customers, a project is started by going to the host files view, right-clicking, and saying projects, add to new project. Then you would get this add new project view. The right thing to do is always select the zTPF. In this view, you can select the project name, and then the tag is totally optional. If you it just gives you a little more text in the display if you wanted to describe what the project was doing in a very, very short piece of text. Now I know that a file already exists, a project file already exists with this name, so I'm going to say okay. I'm going to say okay anyway. Now I'm being told the project file exists. Now if we went back and looked at the project view, we would see I don't have a project named APE4. What does it mean the project file already exists? Well, what it means is that on your disk, in your GI user folder, you have a project named APE4, or I do. And so this is just simply that an old file is there. Maybe I don't even need it anymore. I used to have a project named APE4. This is alerting me that, hey, you've already got a project named APE4, maybe you should just open that one. But most of the time, I don't care. I'm just going to go forward and overwrite the file. There's no harm at all in doing that. So I'm going to overwrite the file. Now these are project variables. Actually, most customers don't have project variables, but what these are environment variables which provide more information for the compiler. So sometimes the compiler needs more information for that particular project in order to know what to do. So most customers don't have these, but that's what these are. So I'm just going to provide some, test data here, which doesn't mean anything, and move on. Okay. The final step is it's saying you right-click that project. Here's that project that you right-clicked. Is this right? And actually, you don't want to change anything here. You could change this, but that would be you just want to accept this and go forward. So now I've got my new project. It's filled out the files, and as you can see, if I go back to the host files view, it's not exactly the same file structure because the things have been taken out of these, not taken out, they've been left there, but the names have been taken out and remapped into the projects view. They're my, my source files. And if I go back to the projects view, you can see they've been put up here. Okay, so one thing, another thing that's customizable for each customer and that you may want to pay some attention to is the configuration file, the config file. Sometimes it's called maketpf.cfg. Sometimes it's called something else like maketpf_user or something _maketpf_cfg. Now this is down here. So if you have options between those will usually be shown in the configurations folder. And you can see that there's a hammer by this one. That means this is the one that's going to be used. So if you're having some problems or you want to make sure you're using the right one, you can look at that. It's just something to be aware of. That shows that that's the one being used. If you go to properties, you actually can change it here. Config file, make TPF-CFG. You could drop. It gives you the other choices that are. It shows you all the files, and you can choose the right one to use. Okay. Now a project. Before I go on, let me make sure that I show you the new feature. Some other new features. In the past, if you wanted to rebuild the source files, recompile, rebuild the source files in the project, you had to multi-select them like this, right-click, and say compile, build, force build. Now you can still do that, but there's a few new right-click items on the project itself. So notice I right-clicked on the project itself, not on any subfolder or anything. And now I've got compile, build, and force build on the project itself. So what does that do? Compile actually goes through and finds all the files that can be compiled, and it compiles them. So it does that for you. So that can save you a few clicks as you're going through that. If I select compile, it's compiling them now. Just going through and finding all, in this case, it's finding all the CPP files. If there were assembler files, it would be finding those and compiling those. Let's see. Now, just let me mention as an aside that if you had more compiling than that to do, you can open up the job status view, and you can see that happening as you go. You can see the progress. Let me compile again. I'll switch over to the job status view. Now, I'm getting a percentage view so that I can know when it's complete. This is a view that if you don't use it, it's easy to miss, but it is here. And it keeps track of the jobs that you've done, usually within the last month. Okay, now each project has a target and platform associated with it. So you can see that, oops, I don't want to rename that. You can see up here that the platform, now your platform names will be different, but similar but different. My platform is zTPF Linux, and that's the platform that's associated with this project. And it also has the target, and your targets will be different too, but the target is important. So you want to...
Ed, sorry to...
Yes.
Can I... Ed, there's a question. So,
okay.
The question is, do I always have to have all source files recompiled?
Um, if you if you right-click on the project, it will recompile all the source files.
Uh,
There is no option now to not recompile or to omit any source files. So if you wanted to recompile but not do all the source files, you would need to say multi-select those, and
uh,
then
okay.
yeah.
The other part of question is can't I just specify one source file? So that answers.
The way you would do that is by finding the source file in the project um, and right-clicking it and compiling. So you can do one, but you can't do it by right-clicking on the project itself.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, David said it's okay. David, do you want to ask anything further, or are you okay with this? You're unmuted.
He answered it just fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Um, the one thing I'll point out is as we as I right-click and compile, notice that after the compile, the project refreshes itself so that any objects that were created or something would be available in the project right away. So we were talking about platforms and targets and how each project has its own, and that the platform and target follows the files that you open. If I open these files, they too have that platform and target. Let me open something that doesn't have isn't associated with any of these things, so we can see the difference. Okay. Well, okay. Now this file is not in any project right now, and so that's probably a fairly unusual situation. I mean, yours are probably in projects, but this one's not in any project. So yeah, and I'll talk about the differences. Why is the platform enabled here for this, but not for these? But we know that these files belong to a project. So if you want to change the platform for these files, you need to go to the project itself, click on the project. Now you can change the platform for the project. So if and you can click on any file in the project as long as we know you're in the project view somewhere on that project. We'll let you change the platform for the project. You can also right-click, go to Properties, General, I believe. No, it's Compiler. Yeah, you can change the platform for the project. This is also where you can change the target here also. This is also where you can make some other adjustments that have to do with the compiler. You could type in some options for the compiler and so forth. Every project has its own properties there. Now, if you've got a file that's not in any project, we also know that because every time you click on a file, we go and look at all the projects and we know which project that file is in. This one's not in any file at all. So and this, you probably don't compile things outside of projects and so forth, but you can. And if you do that, there's a sort of an invisible default project that belongs to the whole, that anything that's not in a project shares. So you've opened this, it sort of belongs to the invisible default project, and which has its own settings, which you could change the platform for this just individual file, and you could compile it and so forth. Well, I can't compile on that project. We know that I'm not allowed to compile on that particular platform, but But if you did, you could change it for just this file, which is outside of any project. Sometimes, occasionally, a file may belong to more than one project. You may have projects open. Okay.
Ed, start one second. Ed. There's a question from Ron. The question is,
Okay.
if we change the platform at a project level, then do we have to recompile every segment in that project?
Let's see. I'm not sure about that. Jeff, could you tell me that? I'm gonna let.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey,
Can you hear me
Jeff.
now? Okay,
Yeah.
it's not my fault. Typically, you would not change the platform because your make TPF config was generated based upon that platform. You would change the target, but not the platform.
Okay.
But if you, for some reason, and that's noticed right now, you click on the project, the platform is grayed out, and that's kind of on design so that you would not be tempted to change the platform easily. But if somehow you could, I don't know if you can change the platform and properties or not. Can you, Ed, if you're right?
Yes, you can. You can.
Okay, right. We allow that from the properties. If you did, you would good chance you'd have to change your make TPF config or whatever your default was to match that platform. And to answer your question, yes, you would have to rebuild everything.
So, okay. Thanks, Jeff. Right now, like I was saying, you may have a file that belongs to more than one project. There's a concept in the projects view called project priority. So the project that is actually nearest the top, because we start at the top and we look down to see which project we consider this file belonging to. So, my project's all the way here at the bottom. If I wanted to I could press Control plus the up arrow key, give it more priority, and move it up so that it has more priority than perhaps some other project that's competing to own. So now, and actually this one did, so now this one is so that may be useful to you. Okay. Now, right clicks on the projects. When you click on the files, there may be some right clicks where we're aware of what project the file is in, and the right clicks that you have, and we just have test things here, but the right clicks that you have will depend on what your company has supplied for those right clicks. For the most part, the right clicks you have here are the same that you'd have in the host files view. You have mostly the same. Well, you have even more here, but we see these files. We know these are files. We know where they are. You can right-click and do things to them. We are coming out with, in fact, we have a new feature, I believe it's with 1320, where we're going to offer right-clicks on the project node itself that are custom. So companies will be able to customize right-clicking on the project node itself. You may not have those yet. Those customizations may be under development, but that's something to look for in the future. Something I wanted to talk about was something that may be confusing. If you want to do a little project management here, you right-click on a project, you've got remove project and delete project. Now, it might be clear, but remove project just removes it from the view. It just takes it out, and you could reopen it. The way you would do that is, so it's removed. The way you would do that is you'd go back and you'd say add existing project. I went way over here to right-click. Probably you don't usually do that. You could right-click on the project's node itself and say add existing project. Now, the project files are kept in the by default in the GI user directory, which is under My Documents, TPF Software, zTPFGI, GI user. Let's see, there they are. So if you lost a project, you're not sure where it is, you can come look in that folder, and that's where it will be. as long as you're, doing things in the default way. So that project that I just removed, there it is. I think that's it. I could come down, find it, and open it. Now I've added it back to my projects view. So now you can also delete the project. That actually deletes the file. It not only removes it from the view, but deletes the file. But if you know you're not going to need the project anymore, or you know it can easily be recreated, you can just go ahead and delete it. And that will remove it from the view and delete it also. We talked about right-clicking on a project and selecting compile. That compiles all the sources. Build will check, well, it does what build normally does for us. It checks the date and time and recompiles if necessary, and then it would go ahead and generate the SO file. If you select force build, that recompiles everything no matter what, and then generates the SO files. Let's see, I showed you where the project files are. I wanted to make sure I did that. Let's see, we talked about auto refresh. We talked about different ways that customers have for starting their projects. Sometimes it's with a web page, sometimes it's associated with the library files view or something, but most customers just right-click on the host files view to start the project. We talked about the projects being inactive. Oh yes, I wanted to mention how do we remember which project was active last? Well, it's either the last file that you, like if I just shut down zTPFGI now and this file belongs to this project and this file is the active file, then when we start back up, this project would open automatically. That's if you have the option set to activate the last used project. Or if you were over here and you had this clicked, we would know that was the active project, and it would restart. If it's possible that the projects would restart and the last what you considered the last project used did not expand automatically, that's maybe because you had all the files closed and you had something else clicked and we didn't reopen it. If you notice some bugs in that, you can let us know if you'd like it to work differently. But that's how it works now. Let's see. That's all I had to present. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Ed. There's the first question is, when we use a force build, will we be able to build the complete project?
Can you unmute Jeff again?
Yes, right. Yeah, force build will rebuild everything, all brand new SOs, as long as there's no compile errors. As long as you right-click on the project and use that force build, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm doing a build, and from what you were saying, that if the data, the source says that it's old, it needs to be recompiled, it will automatically just recompile it instead of just building or linking. Does it tell me it's doing this so that I have an idea that I know I'm working with something that was just done?
In the build tab is the output of everything that it says each source. Even for the build, it will go through each source in the project, and it will then look and call make TPF for that source, and make TPF would say nothing to be done or whatever, or it's going to say compiled, return code. So if you look closely in the build tab, it would have each source and what was done to it. Also, probably should be said here, when you say build without the force, that is also configurable by customer. So not yet, but I know one customer was considering saying even a build would be a force build. So in that case, if it's configured by the customer, the build means force build. Of course, it would reforce everything. But in general, the build will just be the same time.
When you're saying force, if the DLM has 5 source files, I've only got one on my disk or one in my project. when I'm making changes, is Force going to recompile even the production versions?
No, it would only do what's in your project, because it actually goes through the directories. The start of it go through the directories and find all the source files, you know, C, assembly, CPP, and SaberTalk, and it will then request a compile for each a build for each of those. So to answer your question, no, the Force build would not rebuild that if it's already been built. Now, when you get to the point of the link, it's going to say, hey, I only had one source that got compiled, but now I have 3 others laying out there. Have they been built? And the date and time would be applied at that point. So if it never was built, it would rebuild it.
Okay, but if it was, like I said, if I had a build script with 5 source files in it, I pulled one in to change it, so I've got my new version of that, and everything's fine on that. I've compiled it, so you've got the .o out there waiting, and now I say link this or build this. He is going to take the 4 other existing .os from the production library plus my 1 development local.
On build, for sure. On Force build, I'm not positive what Make TPF does.
Okay. And from what you were saying before, if in the build, if he does find something I have on in my own folder that he feels needs to be recompiled, when he does it, I don't get anything up front to flag that for me. I need to go back through and look through the whole console log.
Anything that actually gets compiled is going to be in the error tab also. So you could also go through the error tab, which is a little easier to see separate files because they're in blue. So that would tell you anything that literally did get compiled. It would not show you what did not, like in the build tab. But it would show you everything, and everything in there, you know, that compiled will be in the error tab. So that would be another way to find out what did get compiled.
Okay, yeah, that's my only concern with some of the tools that we're currently working with, this and Toolkit, is that things happen in the background. Nothing's raising a red flag to tell me it's happening. So there's times when, let's just say, it's not the easiest thing to know what I really have that I'm working with.
Right. I understand. And that's part of, you know, configuration and trying to simplify things, which I know you've been working on.
Okay.
So that
no,
you can tell the rules.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the date and time of the objects here might also give a clue, but of what has happened. Probably not as easy as looking in the error tab. Chitra, I see that we have another question from Diana, which is where is the GI user directory? Please show it again. Okay, so if you go to your documents, my documents directory, and I happen to have a lot of things here, but TPF, there's a TPF software. Oops, I've got the wrong one. Let me sort. There's a TPF software subfolder under my documents. Under that, there is a zTPF, and you won't have this many things, I hope. There's a zTPFGI subfolder, and under that there is a GI user, and that's where the projects are placed, and a few other things are placed there, but mainly it's the projects that would be of interest to you. So, you can go here and maybe find some things that you just don't care about anymore, and you could delete them, and that would be fine. Make sure they're not in the projects view while you're doing that. I hope I answered that question. Another question you had, Chitra, was when a project is deleted, is the host file deleted as well? Well, because the project file is deleted, we do not delete anything on the host. So only as long as the project file is on the PC, there's nothing on the host at all that's affected. The project file just contains the locations of the files that are inside of it, along with some options that you've selected.
John, does that answer your question? If you're okay with the answer, just pass on a message.
Thanks for your questions, and thanks, Jeff, for helping out with those answers. I guess that's all we have, Chitra.
John is good with the answer, Ed. There's one more question, Ed.
Okay.
I'm just messaging it because it's more like a scenario.
Oh, I see. Sometimes when I open GI, an existing project that I added to the projects in a previous day does not show up in the projects view, and I have to use the option to re-add an existing project. Do we know why this happened?
Is this from Delta?
I don't know.
What company runs? Well, if it is from a company that uses a third-party software on a product like Citrix, a lot of times the Citrix server itself will get reset or it won't close something down like it should. And those things are being looked at for companies that have like Citrix. Well, mainly it's more to deal with Citrix and zTPFGI, but there's things we can do. If it's on your PC itself, I would not know why that would happen. I really haven't seen that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is if we did shut down abnormally, perhaps we might not have remembered if the project was just added. That's the only reason I could think of, in addition to what you said, Jeff.
Ed, Ron is from Delta, and yes, we use Citrix, so this was his response.
Yeah, I use that to help with Delta support, and I see that every once in a while myself, and it's connected with Citrix in the way it saves and restores sessions. We're working on some features with Citrix Group to try to relieve some of that.
Ron, you're unmuted, so you can ask a question directly to Jeff and Ed here.
Yeah, he answered it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for joining the session. Have a good day. Thank you.